The Dallas Cowboys need to make some big changes after the bye, even on offense. We'll tell you what they are next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Thank you for tuning in. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. He is Landon McCool, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. All right, Landon, let's talk about the Cowboys offense, because even though this is a pretty good unit, there's always room for some improvement, right? And coming out of the bye week, we kind of identified 3 things that we would like to see changed or maybe improved to try to get this team going in the right direction. And I want to start on the run game, because for as good as the pass game has been, the run game has been good, but it's been inconsistent. How do they get this run game back on track?
Yeah, well, I think they need to take some pressure off of Javonte Williams. I mean, that's the first thing. Is he's done a fantastic job. He's exceeded our expectations. He's been a bell cow back when we didn't even expect that we had one. All of that has been fantastic. But the Cowboys have, since Miles Sanders has been injured, have failed to find a true running back to kind of spell him properly. And there certainly has to be concern that as the season wears on, will his production start to wear away a little bit as well? So the Cowboys have got to find something there at the running back 2 position, because they've tried Jaydon Blue. It's been very mixed results, to the point where they basically have had him as a healthy scratch these last 2 weeks. They've had Phil Mafah, who's been on the injured reserve this whole time. I think he is healthy and coming off this week. They opened up his practice window, if I'm not mistaken, before the bye. So I think we're getting closer and closer to that. But as it stands right now, I mean, if there was an injury to Javonte Williams, and I'm knocking on wood if you can't hear, the Cowboys would be in some real trouble. I think outside of being able to mix it up with a couple of guys here, like Turpin and CD taking a carry here and there, I don't know that the Cowboys really would have an answer if that were to happen.
What would you like to see them do? Would you like to see it be more of Jaydon Blue? Would you like it to be Phil Mafah? Do you want to see more of Malik Davis? Because eventually somebody's going to have to get some of these touches. There's a stretch coming up, actually starting this week, where you have 4 games in 18 days, and there's just no way Javonte Williams is going to be able to handle 80 touches during that stretch. So what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of thought that by now we would start seeing some veteran guys come in. Well, I think, Mafah is an option here if you can get him healthy. And I think, you would have loved to get someone who was a little bit different type than Javonte Williams. That's why, you would have hoped that Blue worked out, or that Sanders was still healthy. I like Malik Davis a lot. I think there was a reason that he continues to kind of hang around, is that when he's given opportunities, he's pretty good. So I think that's like a pretty nice floor that you have right now. But you're right. You've got some tough games coming up against some really good defenses, and you're going to have to run the ball to have a balanced offense to win these games. And if you give all those carries to Javonte Williams, you're really going to have some problems in the back end of the season. You need to find a way to balance that out a little bit.
I want to get back to Phil Mafah and Jaydon Blue in just a second, but this is like a catnip question to you. Why not use more Hunter Lipke as a running back? Or, I mean, again, it doesn't have to be full-time. It could be more as a pass blocker, but he's got 2 carries this year. He's got 4 receptions. They paid him right before the season started. He's got 6 offensive touches. That's math for you, 2 + 4. Why don't they get him more involved?
I don't know. I mean, again, I think that the thought process originally in the season probably was, to have him included as part of a rotation, because I don't know that maybe they didn't necessarily know what they had in Javonte Williams. But as Javonte Williams kind of really played well, I feel like, he gobbled up a lot of what would have been Lipke's, carries. But I think at this point, you should be thinking about giving him some more carries. And I don't know that it's enough to want him to be the running back 2 on this team necessarily.
But we're just talking about, why not give him 3 or 4 carries just to try to divvy up some of that work, so you can cobble together our RB2.
Yeah, especially some of the short yardage stuff, just to kind of take the hits off of his body a little bit, right? You know that's something Lipke can do, and it'll just and it's those are obviously some high leverage body shots that the running backs can take that can really take some oomph out of your season if you accumulate a lot of them. So I think just taking some carries here and there would help, but they still obviously to my point like need more than that obviously. But I think that there are solutions in house that you can kind of redistribute some of his carries a little bit just to try to keep down the wear and tear. But I also think that you're going to need to start fully trusting one of these running backs to be a running back too and start giving them more series than we've seen so far this year.
And honestly, part of me just wants to see Jaydon Blue in a bigger role, have him learn on the job, and not to the point of you're giving up in the season. But this is somebody who the Cowboys did draft in the 5th round. He's very talented. Is it as simple as just designing 7 or 8 ways to get him the ball a game? Or do you think there's just a lot of growing up he needs to do as a player before we can even get to that point where you could even design a role for him?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the problem is that, in order to get him on the field, you've got to feel comfortable that he can do everything that you need him to do, including dealing with all the checks and all the, the changes that can happen, making sure that he understands the protections. Unless you're just putting him down out there on 3rd down with a very defined role where you're not going to audible and change things, then it can be very complicated. And if you haven't gotten that all down quite yet, which I'm assuming that that's part of the issue here, besides the fact that we've seen an issue with him getting through contact, which he's really had a really struggle to just break a tackle, to be honest, in the NFL.
That's a nice way of saying it. Go ahead.
I think that this is enough that you're like, man, I mean, we've given you opportunities and you haven't quite shown us enough yet. You still need to earn it on the practice field before we're going to be ready to put you on the field and feel comfortable about it.
Can I be truthfully honest about Jaydon Blue for 2 seconds?
Yeah.
There's a difference between not being able to break a tackle and run through contact and being, I don't want to say afraid, because then it gives it a super negative connotation, but there's just not a willingness to try to go be physical right now. And I think the way that Clayton Adams and Connor Riley and Brian Schottenheimer have designed this offense, they kind of need a physical back that embraces contact. And I know Jaydon Blue is different than every other running back on the roster, but he's almost shying away from that. You can't have that as a running back.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the guys that are his size and smaller, even really that make it in the league, the thing that they all have in common is that they are abnormally physical for their size, right? And Jaydon Blue has made a career in high school and college of avoiding contact, which you can do when you're a good enough athlete at that level. In the NFL, it's just not possible. You have to understand that contact is part of the deal, and you have to not only be willing to hit it, but you need to embrace it. And make it part of your game a little bit too, and deal punishment. But I think there's times when we just see him and he runs into contact and he just stops. His legs just stop moving and he just he goes down. Well, so we just can't have that.
And that's why I'm interested to see Phil Mafah. Phil Mafah's got other concerns. He's not a great athlete. I wonder what he can do as a pass catcher, but I do think he can have a role as a 1st and 2nd down guy, playing downhill, being physical, just giving you 85% of what Javonte Williams can give you. And maybe the Cowboys just don't trust him yet in pass pro. Maybe they're worried that he's still not 100% healthy. I don't know. But there is part of me that thinks maybe he's a better fit in this offense.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, I think what you can do is that you like Javonte Williams, or I'm speaking for myself. I like Javonte Williams a lot on 3rd downs, right? Because he can catch the ball, he's reliable, he's not dynamic, he's not what you're looking for with Jaydon Blue or one of these other kind of change of pace backs. But if you're dumping the ball off for a check down, a normal guy gets you 5, he can get you 6, right? Yeah. So I think that's consistently good. So that's enough that if you're trying to give a redistribution of these snaps a little bit, yeah, you can bring in Phil Mafah for some of the early down stuff as long as he knows the role and knows how to perform properly, and that gives a little bit of alleviation. It still gets Williams out there on the high leverage downs where you really, really need him, and pass protection as well, right?
Yeah, I just want to see this team run the ball better in the second half of the year. They've run the ball well in the first half, but just continue that. Be physical. They have not created a bunch of chunk plays outside of some Javonte Williams runs at the end of these halves.
At the end of halves, right? Yeah.
But I'd like to see more of those 8, 10, 12-yard runs,
Yes.
Maybe the offensive line, now that it's a little healthier, we'll get to that in a second, can help them do that. All right, let's talk about some of those changes on the offensive line, specifically the one happening over at right tackle. We will get to that next.
Today's show is brought to you by our friends over there at Peloton. Look, folks, it's time to break through the busiest time of the year with a brand new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus that's powered by Peloton IQ. It's Peloton's most elevated technology and equipment yet that gives you real-time guidance, and it gives you endless ways to move, whether you want to work out by yourself or if you want to work out with your favorite instructor, like my personal favorite, Alex Toussaint. He always gets me fired up to tackle the day. And the thing I like about Peloton, it helps me achieve more in less times. They have features that help you plan, stay motivated, track your progress, and Peloton IQ also provides personalized workout plans and recommendations. That's something that I use right now during the busiest time of the year covering the NFL. They plan my workouts for me based on my mood, my vibe, and also my favorite instructors. So make sure you check it out and use it, because it also helps you correct your form in real time, and it maximizes your reps. It counts your reps so that you can do it smarter, safer, and more efficient. Let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
This episode is brought to you by Rippling. If you're a business owner, here's the truth. SaaS promised to make work easier, but now the average company is buried by hundreds of apps that slow down your teams and simply don't work together. That's not SaaS, that's SAD, software as a service, and that's why you need Rippling. Rippling is the unified platform for global HR, payroll, IT, and finance all in one place. They've helped millions of businesses replace a mess of disconnected tools with one system designed to give leaders clarity, speed, and control. Whether you want your entire HR, IT, or finance operations to run as one, or just need to fill in the gaps where your software stacks, Rippling can do it all. And right now you can get 6 months free when you go to rippling.com/LockedOnNFL. Learn more at Rippling, RIPPLING.com/LockedOnNFL. That's rippling.com/LockedOnNFL for 6 months free. Terms and conditions apply. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. And thank you for making the Locked On Network the #1 sports podcast network. Landon, let's talk about some offensive line changes. Now, we think for the most part, we know who 4 of the 5 starters are. We saw last week Terence Steele get benched in favor of Nate Thomas. Now, unfortunately, Nate Thomas really struggled in his limited snaps, but would you like to see that trend continue?
I think I'd like to see more of Nate Thomas, and I think that we didn't see a clear winner in that battle on the last time we saw these two go at it, and I think that there were opportunities that I feel like maybe were lost at certain points by not having Terence Steele out there. Because I think it's very clear right now that they're probably equal as pass protectors, I think, or at least close. But Terence Steele is still a clear better run blocker than Nate Thomas is. But I think that, the only way that he's going to continue to get better is continue to get out there and play. And I think you need to give him opportunities. I don't think that Terence Steele is necessarily going to be back next year, especially if you like what you've got from Thomas. So I think you want to kind of confirm that situation because you're going to have some decisions to make at a certain point, and these guys need opportunities to play. They've shown that they can do it too. That kind of moving him in and out isn't going to be unnecessarily a problem. So I think that's something that probably we'll see a little bit more of, and I think it's a good thing.
There's part of me that just wonders, what's Nate Thomas's best position long-term? Is it left tackle? Is it right tackle? And then kind of go from there. Do you think Guyton has made enough improvements in year 2 that he should stay at left tackle no matter what? I'm not saying take him off the field, but
no, I think it's a fair question. Whether you move him over to right tackle potentially and move Thomas back to left tackle, I think.
Well, what's your best 5? And I think what you need to start learning is figuring out what's your best 5. And what could it be in 2026 and beyond, right? Because, again, we've kind of highlighted for a while now that we think 2026 and 2027 is the window. All of these guys are under contract for those 2 seasons. Figure it out now before you get to the offseason.
I think, it's a lot like the defense in some ways, where one thing you can get into trouble with is just continually moving these guys and like not getting enough continuity. I think that is an issue, but I think it's a fair question to ask after watching Nate Thomas a little bit, maybe, and also watching Guyton. Is Thomas a better left tackle, and is Guyton a better right tackle? I think that Thomas has played better this year at left tackle a little bit, maybe because he got so much work in training camp at left tackle while Guyton was injured. I think Guyton has certainly improved. I do like the where he is, and I do think the trajectory is correct, but I think he still kind of needs to continue to take a step this year. But I do think, I also, keeping all of that in mind, if you don't see Guyton take that kind of step that you're expecting, I don't think that it's unfair to go into the offseason and question maybe about moving them around and seeing where everyone's best fit is.
I mean, because I would almost be surprised if Terence Steele is back next year. Not that he's played so poorly that you need to cut him, but you can save so much money by cutting him. And if the difference isn't all that big, maybe you cut him, you draft a tackle, or maybe your hope Cornelius, who you drafted on day 3 this year, could eventually be that spot. Maybe we see Cornelius at some point this year. The other part of this offensive line is I just want to see them play better. Like, they were fully healthy last week against Arizona. They got their butts kicked. Like, those guys just got dominated up front. Tyler Smith is struggling. He's dealing with a knee injury, tendonitis. So I understand that. Cooper Beebe was his first game back, but he hasn't played. He hasn't taken that step that I was hoping that he would this year. And I think Guyton has been better, but I'd like to see him take another step. I think we just need to see this unit play better to be encouraged long-term.
Yeah, I was gonna debate a little bit the term fully healthy, because I think that's you as you just laid out. I think they all were just basically coming. I mean, that was BB's first game back, right? Booker's second game back. Smith has been dealing with knee tendonitis, as you mentioned. Guyton obviously has been dealing with injuries, been kind of battling through it a little bit. So, I think this bye week came at the right time for all these guys, and that was one of the other points I wanted to make in the back half of the segment, is that it almost feels like you're getting a reset here for these, kind of injured guys who are getting a week off their bodies a little bit, hopefully getting a little bit extra treatment. You think maybe they get, especially because of the type of injuries they got right now that they've had some time away from them. You think, okay, hopefully you get a little bit more refreshed version of that interior trio, specifically because they got some opportunity to kind of get off their feet a little bit.
What do you say to the argument that the offensive line played better when TJ Bass and Brock Hoffman were in the lineup a couple weeks ago?
I think it's about in what aspects they played better, because I don't think it was across the board that they necessarily played better. But I think that, it's not necessarily.
They ran the ball well, pretty good with those guys.
They ran the ball pretty well, but I still think that it wasn't like, you don't feel like you were running. Bass was like not the tip of the spear in that because they were running behind him. He was doing his job and admirable. I think in pass protection, that's like specifically where those guys may have a little bit of an advantage on some of the younger guys, because they've been in the league a little bit longer than some of the younger guys. So I think Hoffman has a very clear ceiling. We've seen that, and BB's floor is above Hoffman's ceiling to me. But I think,
but Bass is pretty good though.
I don't disagree.
That's the hard part, is I think Bass has been playing good football this year. Do you just keep him back out of the bench? Do you try to use some more 6 offensive line packages to get him on the field? Or I don't know what you do, but I think the overall point is the offensive line's got to play better. Like, they've invested so many picks and resources into this unit. They can't have this be a middling unit. They've got to be a top 10 unit, and they just haven't been that this year.
Well, the only way they're going to get there is experience. That's why, as much as Bass has been better right now, when he was in there at times, I just think you can't play. You got to play Booker, because that Booker is going to eventually be.
Booker's been good. I think Booker might have been their best offensive lineman the last couple of weeks. I think he's been really, really good. And Tyler Smith is going to be fine. It's just trying to figure out a way to get your best 5 on the field. And I'm just not sure I know who their best 5 offensive linemen are yet.
I think we know who. I think well, that's fair, especially at the right tackle position. I think at a certain point, but I think at center, I think we'll see. Let's see what BB does this week because I think this is an opportunity for him to be healthy for the first time since week.
What I was more suggesting is there a situation where Tyler Smith at left tackle and Booker and Bass are your guards if that's not your best five?
And then who's playing right tackle in that position?
You have Guyton and Thomas compete for that. Probably Guyton.
I think, look, it's an interesting conversation. I also think that we overblow how good Tyler Smith was as a left tackle.
100% agree. But
so I think there's a ceiling with Tyler Smith at left tackle that he doesn't have at guard.
But is Tyler Smith at left tackle and Bass at left guard better than Tyler Guyton at left tackle and Smith at left guard? I don't know. I tend to side with keeping Smith at left guard. But I think at some point, maybe we do have that conversation. I don't think you need to have it now. Now, let's see how the final 8 games of the season go, and we can readjust that in the offseason. Let's talk about some changes at the pass catcher position, although that's being a little bit nice to Brevyn Spann-Ford. Could we see more of Ryan Flournoy and Spann-Ford in the second half of the season? We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA's back, and there's not a better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or you just want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score the next bucket to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late game push. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head over to FanDuel.com and sign up to play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL podcast. 2 shows every single day. 1 in the morning with Tyler Rowland, 1 in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins, available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Landon, let's talk about some changes that could happen at the pass catcher position. And I want to start with Ryan Flournoy, who made a couple nice catches against Arizona. Is it time for Dallas just to lean into Flournoy being the clear-cut number 3 receiver and kind of stop with Turpin and Tolbert handling that job?
Well, I mean, I think that they kind of almost already have, right? Like it feels like in a certain key moments in the game, they were looking Flournoy's way on third downs, and I remember that one conversion that he had, like a little 17-yard out or whatever it was. I mean, I think that that's already started in some ways. And I think that, obviously the other part of the issue is that since Turpin has been back from his injury, he hasn't been as useful as a receiver, right? I think he's had a couple drops at key moments, and it's kind of hurt. And those are the kind of inconsistencies that have been problematic with the offense these last few weeks when it's gotten bogged down is, drops and penalties and stuff like that. So I just feel like for guys like Flournoy, who have been very reliable, you should reward that a little bit. You do have Mingo coming back as well. So do you give the opportunity to kind of get him on the field and see what he's like? And either way, I think it's time to kind of maybe move off Tolbert a little bit and give some and maybe some of the looks that Turpin's getting as a receiver, and give those opportunities to some of these other guys that you have in the receiver core that you at least need to get eyes on and see exactly what you've got.
Yeah, Tolbert's role has really been reduced since early in the season. Week 2, Tolbert played 58 snaps. Week 3, it was over 60 snaps. The last 2 weeks combined, he's at like 20 snaps. Like he's basically out of the equation at all. I think my thing is, do you take Turpin snaps? Turpin was getting pretty consistently 20 to 25 snaps a game before his injury, and just give all those to Flournoy. I know you mentioned Mingo, but I just wonder with Flournoy, he's a younger player. He's made some big plays. He was awesome in that Carolina game, and just really lean into Flournoy, seeing maybe if he can be the number 3 receiver for the future here.
Well, I think Mingo could also do some of the the Turpin stuff too until maybe Turpin gets a little bit healthier or whatever, because you could give him jet sweep stuff if you needed to, or some of these short passes, swing him passes on the flat. And he's not the same kind of speedster, obviously, that Turpin is, but he's a tackle breaker. So I think in the same sort of way, he can be deployed in a lot of the similar ways. But yeah, I do think that, as Flournoy continues to get better and more well-rounded, and especially if he becomes a better blocker, I think it's going to be easier for him to start eating into Tolbert's snaps even further. And I wouldn't be shocked if we wake up one of these days and Tolbert's a healthy scratch, just because you've got so many of these guys that you want to see, and you kind of know what you already got in Tolbert.
Last one, Brevyn Spann-Ford, 9 snaps last week against the Cardinals. While Luke Schoonmaker is, not getting a ton more. He played 13 snaps in the game. The week before that, Luke Schoonmaker played 29. Brevyn Spann-Ford was at 7. Is it time just to switch those up? I think at this point, we kind of know what Luke Schoonmaker is. Brevyn Spann-Ford is PFF's number 2 rated tight end in the NFL this year. Why not just try to give him 15, 20 snaps a game?
Well, I think you should. And here's the other addendum to that too. I think you should be deploying him more as a pass blocker. Because I think you should be throwing more from 12 and 13 personnel, because I think, first of all, just generally speaking, you get better EPA and success on throwing from those formations, but also because the Cowboys have struggled to protect the Dak at certain points, especially when teams know that they're throwing the ball. Having Flournoy out there as a pass blocker, I think, is more effective of him lining up the scrimmage and helping one of these pass rushers than having an extra wide receiver out there, and because you're trying to get the ball to CD and Pickens anyways, right?
I would love to just have him chip a defensive end and then get up the field. So many times they've just had him fan out to the flat, and it's just too hard for those big tight ends to get up the field. That would be an easy way to get him involved in the offense.
Yeah, and then obviously on rundowns, he needs to be on every single rundown, because he's just an absolute punisher as a run blocker. So yeah, and then every once in a while, mix it up and throw him a pass, because look, it's clear that he's just not adept as a pass catcher, but he's something as a run blocker, and you should use him on every single opportunity you can.
I know. I just would like to see more of Brevyn Spann-Ford. I think he's a good player. Lean into your good players. And with Schoonmaker's 26, 27 already. He's going to be going into the last year of his deal in 2026. Lean into playing these young guys more. Get them roles on offense. And I think he's going to help not only the run game, but also the passing game as well, as you mentioned. So those are a couple of the changes that we would like to see from the Cowboys. We'll see if they make them here in the second half of the season. That is it for today's show. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus _Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.